Chuggaaconroy. I'm not gonna pretend like I know who this creator is. Before yesterday, I didn't even know who he actually was, but he recently got hit with some allegations of sexual harassment from another creator by the name of Lady Emily. And first, it starts off with a tweet saying that she was scrolling through Reddit and seeing dozens of comments about a popular YouTuber who sexually harassed her for several months, being praised with being a wholesome person and with only green flags. And then she quote tweets herself saying that he had been trying to initiate erotic foot fetish roleplay with her, even though he had a girlfriend at the time, and then also sending shoes to her house in the guise of trying to get feet pics from her afterwards. And then she shares some screenshots. I'm not going to read out all of the screenshots. I'm going to put some of them on the screen when it applies to what I'm saying at the time of the video. But if you want someone to read out all the messages, I definitely recommend that you go check out Bo Black's video, because he reads through all the screenshots, all the tweets, and everything. And I think probably later today, at the time when we were releasing this, he's probably going to have a video of people reacting to the overall situation with several tweets from different people. And yeah, basically what I want to say is, at no point in reading any of these messages does she ever actually initiate or insinuate any boundaries, and she doesn't establish any of those, and she doesn't ever insinuate that she's feeling uncomfortable with him in any way. And it also doesn't seem like that she's actually even stated towards him that she was feeling uncomfortable with his behavior and with his, fetish and like how he was speaking towards her and etc, etc. So if her boundaries were overstepped, then it definitely wasn't established, or it doesn't seem like it was definitely established in any way, because most of the messages just seem to be them positively talking to one another, and it seemed like that they were very comfortable with one another, and none of the messages actually ever insinuate that anyone in the conversation was at all uncomfortable with one another. But at the same time, maybe she was, and she was trying to get that across with some social cues and trying to make it very apparent that she was feeling that way. And he just wasn't paying attention to that. Maybe he just wasn't fully aware of the social cues that she was sending his way, and he just couldn't read them properly. Which is definitely a possibility, considering the fact that apparently from what I'm seeing on Twitter, he is actually on the spectrum for autism. So it's very apparent that most people know that people who are on the spectrum and do have autism have more difficulties reading social cues from other people than people who don't have autism. So it's probably very apparent that maybe he just was completely oblivious to all the social cues that were established throughout their conversations from one another, and he just wasn't able to properly read them because, well, he has autism. But that isn't really a defense. I will acknowledge that some of his messages are kind of weird. They do, kind of overstep her boundaries, and that definitely is wrong. You shouldn't overstep someone's boundaries. You shouldn't make another person uncomfortable. And when another person does feel uncomfortable, you need to apologize towards that person. But from what I'm reading and from what I'm seeing and from all the tweets and all the messages, none of the messages actually ever have her establish her boundaries. She doesn't ever insinuate or establish that she does feel uncomfortable with him. There are apparently other women who he has done this to before, and no one else has actually come out with their stories, right? I'm not saying like they need to come out with them, because I do acknowledge that it definitely is difficult for them to come out with their stories, because it's very, very personal thing, and it could maybe ruin their reputation anyway. Regardless, no one else has come out with their own stories. She hasn't had any screenshots of someone confirming that this has happened to them. She's just saying that apparently more people have had this happen to them before. My whole thing so far is, if she really truly felt uncomfortable with him, why didn't she ever tell that to him in the first place? They could have talked with one another, and they could have established boundaries with one another, and she could have confronted him if he truly was doing this to more people, specifically more women. She could have spoken to him that, hey, there are also other women who are like me and who are struggling to confront you about this, but they also feel uncomfortable with you trying to talk about your potential foot fetish and trying to establish erotic role plays, and I'm not very comfortable with that, and that's overstepping my boundaries. I would really respect that if you respect my boundaries and try not to do that with me and other people. And then she would also then tell the other people to go ahead and talk to him about that. At any point, privately, mind you, she could have just done this entirely, but instead of speaking with him privately and having other people speak with him privately as well, instead of handling this whole situation privately like it should have been done, she goes ahead and she just puts all this out in the air on Twitter and tries to not deplatform him or ruin his reputation, but this has definitely ruined a lot of people's preconceived notions with him as a creator. And plenty of people on Twitter have been reading the situation and have only the one side of the story. They don't have his side of the story. And they're immediately thinking that he's just a big creep and that he's a terrible person and that he just likes to sexually harass women, when I don't think he actually meant to do any of this maliciously. Now, of course, there's this whole thing of like, oh, well, you don't have to do something malicious in order to do something bad. And it's like, yes, while that's true, that still doesn't mean that he was trying to do any of this maliciously. And if you had told him what you were feeling at that time, he would have apologized. He most likely would have apologized because he actually responded to all these allegations. He made a tweet saying that he apologizes towards her and some potentially other people who may have felt the same way, and that he won't do this ever again. So if you had just confronted him privately and talked to him about how you were feeling at that time, when you were feeling like he was overstepping your boundaries and that he was making you feel very uncomfortable, he most likely would have apologized. He would have completely shifted his entire behavior and he would have just done the right thing. But you have no idea if he would have done that, because instead of talking to him privately like a fucking adult, you instead put him on blast on the entire internet for them to be able to see. And I think that's fucked up, right? That's like the main thing I can't stand about the situation is like, yeah, even though what Chuggaaconroy did was like really, really messed up. He was being very inappropriate and being very not aggressive, but like very forthcoming with like his fetish and stuff like that and all this other stuff. And even though he was being a little bit of a weirdo, that still doesn't mean that you need to go ahead and put him on blast like this. He should have just been an adult, spoke with him privately, and use your words to establish how you were feeling at that time. That's what you should have done. But instead of doing that, you just may have ruined his reputation for a lot of people. He's already, I think, lost probably like 100,000 subscribers, because I remember seeing him at 1.28 and now he's at 1.27. And yeah, a lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions about him now because of this entire situation, and I think that's kind of messed up. And to the people that are saying that she doesn't need to tell him that she feels uncomfortable with him, the reason why I feel like she should have done that is because they do know each other. They have been talking and interacting with one another for a significant amount of time. If she didn't know anything about him and he just randomly started talking to her out of nowhere and was talking about like his foot fetish and like trying to establish like an erotic foot fetish roleplay like she was saying that he was trying to do, then it would have been weird. And, you know, obviously at that point she definitely doesn't need to say that she feels uncomfortable. She could just block him at that point. But from the conversations at hand, it looks like that they had been talking to each other for multiple months at a time. More than enough time has passed for the two of them to be considered at the very least mutuals, and that they interact with one another on a pretty frequent basis to the point where they know a decent amount with one another and they have entirely different conversations with one another. I don't know, just this whole situation was very weird. I feel like this could have been handled in a much better way than how it was. I'm not trying to victim blame, and I'm not trying to defend Chugga in this situation. I just think that if it had been handled in a better way, this wouldn't have had to happen. But unfortunately, it didn't. And now I'm talking about this, right? This is the video for the week. So, yeah. Let me know what your thoughts are about this situation in the comments, because I'm definitely very interested to what people have to say about this. I understand that there are some people that have been watching Chugga for a very long time, and they are fans, and they are potentially, and he's potentially someone that they are the first YouTuber that they've ever watched, you know, and this might actually be kind of devastating for you. But I truly think that he didn't mean to do this in a malicious way. I don't think he meant to do harm by this, and that if they just talked with each other, things would have been sorted out and it would have been for the better. But that didn't happen, unfortunately. So I guess it is what it is. I hope that everyone from the situation learns from this. I hope that he learns how to properly read social cues better. And yeah, I don't know, right? I feel like this entire situation could have been handled better. It didn't even really need to happen, but it did. Considering what's going on with the world right now, and there are a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on right now that are just so much more important. This is a topic at hand that just really didn't even need to happen. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm out. Peace.